Hello everyone, my name is Anton, and today I have a super interesting interview on my channel. The interview is with Vladimir, who is the founder of Albumentations. Vladimir is not only founder of Albumentations, he is Grandmaster of Kaggle, he is startupper, he worked in a lot of famous companies, and we will speak not only about augmentation and the future of augmentation, but also about open source, what is motivation to do open source, how to promote your open source, and can you even get the money from the open source? Let's go. Hi, Vladimir. I'm glad you visit my podcast. So, please tell me in the beginning a few words about Augmentation, what it's all about.
Okay, so let's start. Augmentations is a project that I'm working on full-time for the past 5 months, and overall, this project is rather old, let's say more than 5 years or so. So it is an open source library with MIT license, so everyone can copy and fork and do whatever they want. And decent amount of companies started on top of it, although later on they switched to different directions, but still it has some value in this domain. This library is about computer vision and originally about training machine learning models. So if you think what kind of business classification to put it in, it would be developer tools. Why do you need it? Typically, when you train models, more diverse and bigger labeled data set you use for training, better and more generalizable model you get. Anton is an expert in this field. So one way to increase the size of the data set and its diversity is to label more data. It's most reliable way. But first of all, it's expensive. Second, it takes time to do it, and you need some experts. For example, if I look at some X-rays or MRIs or CT scans, I would not have slightest clue what type of the disease or like abnormality exists there. So you need like some specialized professional doctors. Basically, people started looking for some additional tricks and methods to increase the diversity and size of your label data set. And there's a technique, again, not new, kind of obvious and on the surface, is called data augmentation. It's not specific to images. You can do it for texts and signals and key points and something else. But Augmentations focuses on images. Roughly speaking, if you want to visualize, let's say if right now you take screenshot of this video and you say, okay, what label this video will have, it will be like person, yeah, or Vladimir. If you rotate it by 45 degrees or flip it horizontally or make it grayscale or do something else about it, it would be the same image, same label for us on the high semantic level. But for neural network, it would be a different set of pixels that it fits and needs to identify this grayscale version rotated by Vladimir of me as me. So this is the trick. So Augmentations takes data and on the fly extremely fast, while GPU is going through the batch for forward and backward pass, it is changing on CPU this data and preparing a new batch. So that's the short story, if it's short.
Yeah. As you mentioned, you started this project like 5 years ago, even more. But why did you decide to return to this project and start like intensively improving it right now?
Okay, sure. It is like this. I worked in Silicon Valley for whatever 7 years, saved a decent amount of money, so I had like plenty of savings. At the same time, in 2021, 3 years ago, I decided that I figure out how to work in industry as an employee working for someone else, and if I want, I can back there at any moment, more or less. That's the hope or proposal. But I like solving puzzles, and next good puzzle would be to learn how to build successful product. So in this sense, I'm all for money, but more interested in like polishing, developing the skills, how to see opportunities or things that are missing in the world, and building something that could address this issue to the level where people, and a lot of people, pay money, and bet a lot of money, meaning like big problem. So I tried to figure out like how to build startups, how to build companies. The issue is it's extremely challenging task, and for the last 3 years, I jumped from project to project and try to improve my skill. You need like 10,000 different skills, and you just like try to address here, there, and then the hope is that at some point it will work out. And so in February, I didn't do, during this time, I didn't do anything about Albumentations. And so we got 400 issues and 30 pull requests. And basically, I mean, no one except like maybe people here and there were working on this project. And then I checked this metrics and statistics, and I've seen that Albumentations is used more than this library is downloaded more than 1 million times per month. Yeah, and this number based on this graph looked like it's growing. So the proposal was, let me maybe like rest a bit or focus on maybe not how to make Augmentations as a successful product, as a startup, as thing that makes money, but let's focus on growth. And for open source, obvious metric on the surface is number of stars. It's still decent metric, although not the most representative. And I started looking at number of downloads. And when I checked Albumentations, it had number of things to be improved. First of all, because we didn't do anything like more or less in 3 years. Second, because my skill set about like writing code architecture, also product marketing, etc., improved. And the new idea was that, again, I live in Silicon Valley, and when you talk to people, maybe first impression, how people judge each other, who raised how big round, but still they want to see how successful, skilled in technical sense you are. And Augmentations, apparently, I did this more or less by accident. I mentioned like existing metrics, and people, wow, it was some VC. Why don't you raise money for it? I just like, okay, so it looks like this is just like these numbers could be interested to someone. And so for the first 5 months, I'm focusing on improving the number of downloads better, like few percent per month. As of now, it's more than 2 million downloads. So in 6 months, like it increased twice. Yeah.
So you're thinking about like Albumentation, like partially like about startup, and what's the difference from startup, and what's the same ideas like startup?
Okay, so startup could be defined in many different ways. Pretty solid definition is something that makes money, meaning have paying customers, and revenue is growing in some percent month over month. So that's how you get this exponential like curve. So if it's not exponential, it's constant. You're not a startup, you're just a business, yeah? If you don't have paying customers, you're not startup, you're unemployed. So in this sense, I don't think about Augmentations as about startup or product, because there is no product, there is no paying customers, and there is no exponent. And downloads is exponent, but not type of the exponent that you would like for a thing called startup. So right now, I think about Augmentations as about exercise or tool or something. So it helps me to develop some skills that could be useful or can be like useless to some tangential kind of like directions. Based on the metrics of Albumentations, I already won some decent hackathon, and CEO of Product Hunt was judging it, so we got some kind of relationship. I got accepted to the South Park Commons community. I got some interesting meetings. People from pretty famous VC firm, general partners, would like to have friendly breakfast and chat more, although I told them that I'm not interested in money. There was some, etc., etc., etc. So there's like some motion about this. So in a way, Augmentations, in a way that I think about it, doesn't have direct path. There could be some tangential path, and we can also like talk about it.
So, and when you mentioned about like amount of stars on GitHub, amount of downloads, etc., how much does this help you to develop Albumentation? Is it like some psychological more, or like to understand that yes, what you are doing like directly improving this, or do you target in for some like first place on GitHub? I don't think it's possible, but what is your limit like? Why you are doing this, and can you tell a little bit?
I mean, as usual, there are like many ways to think about it. Do I get dopamine boosts when I see that in this leaderboard of the number of downloads, Albumentations moved a few places higher. I definitely do. So every person who worked on Kaggle, you remember this feeling when just like your submission, you moved up like by 20 places. You're just like, life is good. So in this sense, I definitely get these boosts. It's one reason. Second, when you work on some open source, it's hard to tell how many users they are. Is it really useful to people? What functionality people are using? So there could be some analytics on top of it, and I'm planning to work on this maybe like rest of the July and August. Let's say from downloads, GitHub API, and maybe adding Mixpanel to the website for tracking of what people search there. But still, it's very limited. Downloads is one. Like stars, it's pretty famous. And if you talk to software engineers and tell them, okay, Albumentations has 13,000 stars, people just like, wow. Because they made some open source projects, they have like projects with 0 stars or 5 stars, things like this. They understand the value metric, how hard to get there. At the same time, when you tell them like 2 million downloads per month, is it a big number or small number? Maybe everyone else is billions, just hard to tell. So I created one leaderboard with the number of stars, another leaderboard with the number of downloads. And yes, when Augmentations moves up, I feel some happiness. At the same time, it gives you some comparison. When I know these numbers about compatible or like similar libraries like Kornia, OpenCV, scikit-image, etc., it tells me how far can we go, where the industry is, what the number of potential users. It's also like an estimate.
So, and what, in your opinion, your like limit in this ladder? Where, like, is it like you're in the mid of this way, or will Augmentation be more popular like than OpenCV or some other projects? Do you have some plans, estimations?
It would be challenging to be more popular than OpenCV, as OpenCV is a dependency in Albumentations, so every download that Albumentations gets automatically adds up to OpenCV as well. So in this sense, there are like some limits here and there. Right now, again, if you talk about like not stars but downloads, like whatever, like 2.1, 2 million monthly downloads, I think it could be doable to get to 5 without too much pain, to 10 with a lot of pain, and after that you can do whatever you want. It will not move up. Who knows? But like roughly, like my gut feeling. Also, in the first few months when I started working on this, downloads kind of like were growing pretty aggressively, but then May, June, they stopped, and it's not going that well. Maybe not that well, that fast. It's still like growing month over month. That's why I shifted my focus and maybe mindset, if you want, or compass, from the number of downloads, which is a cool metric to have, and working on this while it's growing, to the thing called impact. The reason is there are many augmentations that could be introduced to Albumentations, and it's not that hard for me to add. The issue is I don't know how to make them useful because I didn't train models that could use them in many years, and I'm kind of outdated, like Mosaic and copy and paste and similar like things where people mix things with each other. There were some pull requests by me about copy and paste, about Mosaic that are not merged because I'm not sure that API and way that it's proposed to use is that convenient and useful and things like this. Another thing that I learned in the past 3 years working on my personal projects, there is a huge gap in the quality of things that you deliver between things that you're using yourself and things that you're collecting feedback from other users, what they're missing and what they would like to add. It's like day and night. When you use something yourself, it's more convenient. You don't need to do this like forth and back kind of loop. You build from the beginning in the most more or less useful way, and then you polish in a way that's convenient to you. It also means that most likely I will add things like Mosaic, copy and paste, and similar when I will start training model that could benefit from this type of the augmentation.
Yeah. Actually, I had a lot of question about Mosaic. Because it's like, in my opinion, when I tried like train Yola, I think it was Yola before, but maybe some later. Like Mosaic was most important augmentation. Like with Mosaic, there was a big boost in accuracy. So I checked issues in Albumation before this interview, and there was a lot of question about Mosaic actually.
Okay, let's say it like this. Right now, so in order for me to have better impact and see what the limitations for Augmentations, I started doing things that I didn't do in like many ways. I started training models for Kaggle competition. Right now, it's a medical image type, something with grayscale images and some specific things about it. And already I've seen a few things that I would like to be improved in Augmentations, and I would address them as soon as possible. When probably I'll make a submit, I'm not sure that I would like to fight till the end. I will need to start and look at another model. So right now it is some kind of weird type of classification, but maybe next would be object detection. And there, as I understand, Mosaic is the most useful for this type of the tasks. So it could be possible that when I'll start training some object detection, I will add Mosaic and copy and paste as soon as possible.
Okay. And how many people are currently working on Augmentation, and is it like only you? Or...
So full time is me. There is another guy called Andrei. He's helping here and there, and he's helping the things that I maybe not less that passionate about. So Albumentations has pretty intense and interesting core functionality and decent amount of users. They don't give a damn about augmentations that I implemented, but they benefit a lot from this core functionality because it allows to do pretty cool things. So Andrei is like improving and working on this because he finds it more fun. I'm focusing on things that are more user facing, transforms, docstrings, some adding functionality here and there, fixing bugs. So in this sense, but he's doing this part time. And also maybe it could be interesting for some of people in your audience. Rules of the games for augmentation is like this: pick whatever you want and work on this. If you kind of like, you can drop any pull request or any work you're doing at any moment, no hard feelings, no questions asked, because you do it for fun in your free time. And so I mean, if you want to boost your technical skill or contribute to cool open source project, I mean, just ping me or create something. Yeah, it would be great.
By the way, it's super popular question about among some like Junes and interns, like how can I like boost my reputation, how I can like have some production experience. And from this point of view, in my opinion, like doing some push into open source project about your topic, it's one of the most easiest way to get some production experience, to get some feedback from experts about how code should look like and how should it work. And I'm totally
Even
agree that it's super useful.
I would say it like also can extend this thought. Sure, it requires some work, but let's imagine some junior that like no one knows will start contributing to Augmentations, and maybe not from the beginning, but at some like will start generating some high quality code. Communication is fast, comfortable, things like this. I would be happy to give a referral to any tech company in Silicon Valley for this person and give my kind of like personal recommendation. Of course, I mean, for this to happen, moment when I'm giving this recommendation or at LinkedIn or in some other way, code should become decent. Pull requests should become of high quality.
But by the way, even I did one pull request in OpenCV, I think more than 10 years ago, but it was only one and it was accepted. It was like license plate detection, I think. So, okay, and if we will like go down for a little technical details, what in your opinion the most fashionable augmentation right now? What is more popular? What is people speaking about? And like all augmentation in Albumation, I think I heard about them like not the 10 years ago, but maybe 8 years ago. But what is popular right now?
This is a good question. I talk to people in different verticals and maybe even different experts, and they have slightly different opinion. For example, when I talk to the guy, I think called Christoph Henkel, his first place at Kaggle in competitions, and he used Albumentations extensively from all different directions in his challenges to get his first places. Say he typically doesn't use color augmentations. He uses all kinds of dropouts. Can be channel drop, course dropout, which also called as random erase or whatever cutout. Yeah, he of course different types of crops. So basically some kind of like geometric things that make sense, flips, rotations, etc., etc. And about color, I like his tricks. So he normalizes images not by mean from standard from ImgNet or things like this. He, for every crop that he does, he computes mean and standard deviation and basically does it on the fly per image. So not some constant value, but per image. And by this, it automatically, because you have different crops, and so there's different mean, different STD, you automatically get color shifts and multiplication by some constant value out of the box. It's basically already included in this. So it's like one type of the opinion, which is pretty cool. Another one, at the same time, I talked to a guy, they're doing some kind of AR, and they need to recognize some visual, and it should be some weird forms. For example, for them, he said that some kind of perspective transforms, I don't know, like piecewinder perspective that I never used myself, was useful because in some purple light, some finger may become like twisted and longer, and somehow the network should like collect key points from I would never guess about this. Then you talk to someone else and some other weird angles. What is the most fashionable? I mean, mix-up works rather well, but mix-up doesn't fit well into Augmentations. I added some implementation, but because mix-up affects not just your images, but loss that you're training with as well, it's not the best API. That's why I'm hesitant to introduce mixing transforms without having hands-on experience. Except this, majority of the people use at most crops, flips, and that's it. We added fancier functionality. Let's say there's like standard transform that used for ImgNet, color jitter. We added plank and jitter, which is like more fancy and presumably is more natural, white balance type shifts, etc., etc. I'm not sure that anyone is using it. We added whatever, instead of RGB shift, some called random tone curve that shifts not by constant values, but in some more fancy natural light, blah, blah, blah fashion. Not sure that anyone uses it. So in a way, if I look at the literature or maybe some tools that promise automatic choice of augmentations, nothing really exists. Nothing is really like working. I have few ideas that I may explore again in my hands-on experience. If it will work for me, maybe it's the way to build a product. Right now, hard to tell. So Anton, if you know some fancy augmentations that I should add in addition to Mosaic, would be happy to do it.
Like sometimes we did some custom augmentation, but usually it's like super dependent on the task, and I don't know like universal answer about this. But other question about this, like 8 years ago, maybe like 6 years ago, there was a lot of talk about augmentation that like can be configurable through some loss function of the training, and like when the model itself decide how to augment itself. Is it like used somewhere nowadays? Is it popular? Because there was like a lot of discussions, a lot of articles, but I didn't saw it.
No, in theory, idea looks cool. We take our model, existing model, we take our delabeled dataset, existing dataset, and magic happens, and we pick some better augmentations, which you may think about hyperparameters, and your network is more powerful and accurate and things like this. Sounds kind of similar to AutoML, And at some point, maybe a few years back, when again, this idea about working on augmentations in the direction of building a product, startup meaning money, paying customer and exponent, is not new. I did some customer research a couple of years back. And then I read, and it was one of the ideas, because if this magical tool would happen, that grant, out of the box will give you a couple % here and there, I mean, it may have some value. Well, similar to AutoML. I read a few papers, and there's nothing. We have some implementation that one of the people who worked in the core team of Albumentations, Alex Parinov, built AutoAlbument. The results were not conclusive. It's unclear. Another maybe angle for this, there is a library called Kornia, and they implemented, and many things that learned from Albumentations about how to transform. They do it in Torchvision so that it could be done on GPUs and in batches and things like this. And also because it was in Torchvision, they decided it makes sense. Let's make these augmentations where possible differentiable. Again, because it looks like a direction toward let's optimize some loss curve based on differentiable augmentations here and there. And there were some research papers published based on this, but as I understand, they are thinking about cutting off this functionality from Kornia because no one really uses it. And it doesn't really provide practical value, but it's an overhead on the code base. So coming back to your question, to my knowledge, it's still the same, but hype is gone, but situation is the same.
And speaking of some other smart approaches, one of your previous startup was about image generation. Did you think about probably merge this image generations functionality in some augmentation? Do you think about that there is some value from this maybe in future? And what do you think about augmentations through image generation?
Okay, let's think about it. So directly embedding generative some models into Albumentations pipeline doesn't sound that useful by the default case, because when you train, you are trying to augment or transform these images on the fly. And all these existing LLM, all these generative models, they cannot compete with OpenCV, NumPy, or similar packages with the performance. So in this sense, direct embedding is not an option. At the same time, as we've seen, idea of mix-up works kind of well. So when you have two images, you merge them in some kind of creative, linear or non-linear way, and this adds boost to the model. Can you go deeper in this direction? In Augmentations, we have a few transforms that I never used, but they look cool on the picture, that take two images, again, to the question of how useful mixing transforms if you don't try it yourself. So you take context, if you want, some shapes from one, let's say, image, and you take some structural components from the second and merge them together, and you get, as an example, we have this transform. You take two images, you perform cosine transform, and then you take some set of frequencies from one image and paste it in the second, and then perform inverse cosine transform. It's very nonlinear, and it affects colors in a very interesting way, and it literally can make some daytime image looking like more to the night. So in this sense, there is some direction there. Again, as I mentioned, doing this on the fly with generative, like some stable diffusion, things like this, is not really the best idea. At the same time, I know that some companies used Albumentations not for training data, but for validation, and they even propose this as a product. So what's the story? Let's say you have some model that is detecting some defects on the factory going through line or something. And you need some guarantees that model will be more or less robust when it will be darker or lighter or something. So again, you have your train set, but you can, and you don't change it with these LLMs, but you can extend your test set. And right now people do this, let's say, with augmentation, random brightness, contrast, make it darker, brighter. But you can be more creative and add some kind of styling through generative images. And if you create this test data set, no need to do it on the fly. You can perform this offline and then kind of use it for testing. Same you can do for training. Again, right now, at this moment, I'm working on this Kaggle competition related to medical imagery. And as you may guess, the number of images there is severely limited. And everyone who worked on these medical images, you split your data by patient. So you have a lot of images, but only a few patients. You split by patient and you get instantly ocean of pain in terms of validation and many of these things. So in situations like this, thinking of how to extend your data with generative images is possible direction, and could be possible direction for monetization. Maybe not for a unicorn, but some ideas could evolve from there.
Yeah, it's pretty nice idea, but definitely I think there is some interesting ways maybe that will be explored in future. So one of like I mentioned in my to my subscribers that there will be interview with you, and some of these questions are from subscribers, and one of the question that may be related to a deeper functionality of Albummentation, it's about batching. I didn't have these problems, but is it somehow limited right now for probably for some types of augmentations?
Augmentations has this functionality. We called it, to the question of naming, we should call it batch or something else. Instead, we called it, for whatever reason, as usual, you add temporary name for a variable and then it sticks there forever. We have functionality called additional targets. What does it mean? It allows you to apply the same transform to the unlimited set of images, bounding boxes, key points, etc. And this functionality is widely used. Some people I know I talk to, they use it to process videos, because when you split this into frames, in each frame you have key points, bounding boxes, and like masks, and you need all of them to be in sync, rotated, flipped, or doing something. And it works out of the box right now. So we have this functionality, although again, it could be an issue, should be an issue, where I call, let's create something called apply to video, which is a wrapper on top of it. Apply to batch, or something that people may more intuitively find. Does it work for all augmentations? Should be, but I don't know. When we talk about this, let's say, tricky one that I described, where you take image and replace Fourier transforms with this external image that's not part of the batch, should work. But again, I would not be surprised if you try and apparently there's some quantity. So my answer is should work. If it doesn't work, ping me in direct mail or issue at GitHub and I'll address it.
Okay. You mentioned a few times different augmentation libraries, and so tell me a little bit more about them. I don't know, is the term of competitors in open source, is it possible to use such term? And speaking about such libraries, who is better and what type of augmentation? What is your opinion? Where is your weak point? Where is points? Where are your strong points? And which of them you are treat as competitors, and which of them it's not fully functional libraries?
Okay, let's think about it. So libraries that come to mind that are widely used, of course, it is Torchvision, Kornia, ImgAug, and there are a few kind of more specific but not really supported, like Augmentor, Autography, something. Because ideal, it's so easy to implement. It looks originally, it's so easy to implement horizontal flip that people go further and then, yeah. So which of them, and what are the strengths and weaknesses? Torchvision. Torchvision comes in addition to PyTorch. Typically, when you type PyTorch, in 90% of the situation, you install Torchvision. And it's not library for image augmentations. It's library for all the things that Torch doesn't want to have inside of it. And it includes augmentations, it includes like some helper functions, many things like this. It has whatever 18 million monthly downloads, as you can see, much more popular. Why? Because it comes out of the box, because it has pretty great documentation. It works on top of pillow images, works on top of torch tensors, and you can merge it and make part of your model, of your PyTorch model, which is really convenient. What are the weaknesses and strengths? I'll compare them to Albumentations. Torchvision is much slower. Okay, now, if we talk regime where images are augmented on one CPU core, Torchvision, and this is typical scenario in many, not in all, but in many scenarios. When you train your image, you have whatever, like 20 CPU cores. Each of them is preparing, processing one image, and then they combined into the batch, and then it goes into the network. So in this sense, if we talk about this scenario, transform of one image on one CPU core, Albumentations is faster, not like by 5% or something. I don't know, Anton may share a recent benchmark with the audience. It's like few times faster for most of the transform. For some of them, it's 100 times faster. So in this sense, in this domain, it's just faster. And Albumentations has wider set of transforms of augmentations. If there is something in Torchvision that Albumtation doesn't have, let me know. I will instantly add it. And it's one of the reasons for us to be able to always to claim that we are more diverse.
And speaking of like functionality, when you start working with Augmentation again, like half a year ago, did you try at the beginning to copy some of existing functionality of such frameworks, or did you just start on optimizing all the speeds of Augmentations?
Okay, so when I started working on this full-time about 6 months ago, you have a long list of things that you can improve about, tests about benchmarking, typing, replacing whatever, like flake8 by rough, and changing, update, doc strings, website. It's just infinite list. So you work on everything that comes to your mind. In the sense, it wasn't a problem. But at the same time, we do have a benchmark. And if you're curious how maybe you don't believe my words about Augmentations being faster, just go and take the code and run on your hardware, look at the code and see if I'm missing something. The reason for this is for Augmentations and our team is not to show off, but as a profiler. And when I ran this in March, there were definitely a few weak points that Augmentations didn't perform as much as maybe as fast as similar libraries. And in spring, I addressed them, and right now, situation is much better. Augmentations is not the fastest library in all the transforms in this setup, but as you can see, it's like almost in all of them and typically fundamentally faster. Now, let's talk about like next library. Next library that comes to mind, it is, people talk a lot about Kornia. Why? Because Kornia, its library implemented in Torch, again, could be merged, could run on GPU, and Kornia not only like image augmentation, but again, has plenty of other functionality. The issue with this library, if you run this again in the setup of one image at a time on the one CPU core, it is the slowest library that I know about in this like space. That's why people typically leverage its better points about running them on GPU in batches. I can see Kornia being useful. You have like 20 million images, you need to process them, and it may happen that processing them, like cropping, rescaling, doing something, may be more convenient on a GPU than doing this on CPU with Augmentations. It could be such a use case, and when I talked with the founder of Kornia, I think it's widely used for that. So for this use case, it's better. For like model training, it is not. They have some wide range of augmentations. I think we have everything that they have. So in this sense, yeah, for image training, Augmentations in this setup would be better. Next library that comes to mind is called DALI. It's library by NVIDIA. It is extremely fast. It reads, decodes libraries JPEG on GPU, and it performs image transformations. It has completely fucked up interface. I was not ever able, when I look at this 3 years ago, I wasn't able using their documentation. There was no ChatGPT at the time to make it run. But people who trained ImageNet and whatever seconds on a bunch of GPUs here and there, for them, DALI could be the best choice. So maybe if it's a big company like Pinterest, Uber, whatever, like Lyft, Google, and they're training model on like 10,000 GPUs and it should be extremely fast and throughput is amazing, DALI could be the choice. To my knowledge, DALI doesn't support bounding boxes, masks, and key points, so it's only for image classification. But if you're going for that narrow case, it's probably the best. But again, Augmentations is not playing in that niche.
Yeah, I hear a lot of jokes about like NVIDIA frameworks, and when you implement one of them, you need additional team that will support it in production. I don't know about how really this is, but for some of frameworks about robotics, I think it's real stuff, or like some generation, synthetic generation. So speaking of, yeah,
let me mention one library that deserves attention, that not that widely used, but I think it's like, if not the best, one of the best. It's called ImgAug. It was an inspiration for Albumentations. This like 7 years ago, when we kind of like people were using at least widely for Kaggle competitions because it supported key points, bounding boxes. It has numerous, like twice more augmentations than Albumentations. And it was like really fast to some extent, but it wasn't fast enough, and that's why we created Augmentations. It is what there was 0 commits to the repository in the last 4 years. It works again on CPU, things like this. Even now, some augmentations are faster in ImgAug. So there is like some plenty of issues and work in progress looking at their code and figuring out how the hell did they squeeze even more of OpenCV, NumPy, and things like this. Not supported in the past 4 years, but it's still an amazing library. When you look at the benchmark, it's, I mean, second best even in this like narrow niche of one CPU, one image.
Okay, and one of a popular question among subscribers, it's about like monetization in open source. How does it work? Is it like through donations, through development of some custom features, maybe some government grants and investment? What did you find for you? How, like, do you try to monetize Augmentation right now, and how it's work in general?
Let's think about this. This is a big question. Open source in general, extremely hard to monetize. I know about few ways. If we talk, let's say, about Ultralytics, they have dual licensing, exactly the same code. If you use it for research and open source, use it for free. If you use it in a company, you pay some fee. It's working for them in some sense. There is like way called co-branding. If you have popular open source some website, you find some companies and they claim it's like in sports that they're your sponsors. You put the big banners on the website, and then they pay you some money here and there. I talk to people and they say it's not really working that well. They pay you a small amount of money and demand a lot. So in this sense, it's not scalable and has like limited applicability. Next thing is like sponsorship. I sponsor one project by myself as a developer. Albumentations has one sponsor that donates $25 a month, some company. Basically, it doesn't work that well. It's possible, and I believe, and it's again in the to-do list that I should come to, if when I'll create analytics and I'll have in front of me a list of 10,000 companies that use Albumentations, and I'll go one by one, call the mail and then meetings, collect feedback, what could be improved, and by the way, ask them if they would like to sponsor whatever, like $100 per month, 1% or something of them, I suspect would be happy to help the project. Is it way to get money? Possible. Is it exponential way to get money, meaning some percent here and there per month? Absolutely not. So in this sense, it's a direction that could work, but I didn't explore it all. Custom features, again, first of all, no one asked me ever about custom features for Augmentations, Second, if they will ask, again, I would be more interested about talking to them what exactly is missing, what's their problem, and trying to figure out what could be built on the side of Augmentations as a product rather than implementing custom feature. There is a thing called open core, and many open source libraries work in this regime. You have some functionality for free, but privacy, security, on demand is for money. But it doesn't work well for developer tools. That's why I suspect popular open source libraries that try to follow this path, like PyTorch Lightning, are not really doing that well. It's doable to raise money, but what's the next step?
Yeah, maybe sell the company to some bigger player. At least, I think OpenCV moves this a few times, from Intel and back inside Intel. But I don't know about this in details. But maybe some integration with some big companies. But it's super interesting question.
You see, if you do step back and really say, okay, people can work on this, I could work on this open source in different kind of with different motivation. One of them, how to make money and make a lot of money, not a lot of, a bit of money, I don't know, a few millions, and do it fast. And doing something, selling to someone and working for someone for earn out for 4 years is a way to go. Again, plenty of people and our friends did this a lot. But is it a scalable skill? Is it how good is this way to earn your first billion? And just imagine that you have enough. I have plenty of savings, and if I want to just make more, it's not a problem for me to live. But this short-term type of thing, let's make something like sell to someone and then work for them for many years as slaves with earn out, and doesn't look that attractive to me at the moment. I may change in the future when I'll be out of money, but who knows? Not yet.
Yeah, but what about some government funding? Is there some grant to improve open source? I never heard about this.
I barely accept it. I was told that such things definitely exist because government is interested in helping popular open source even more. There are VC funds that have, some grants to help popular open source. For example, in March, I applied to GitHub Accelerator, and they donate 40,000 to you and then give you 1 month training and mentoring, and they don't ask anything in return. Sequoia Capital has some open source. I don't know what they expect from it. So it may happen that some local opportunities here and there, they can exist. In this sense, for applying for them, again, let's say you're in government and people apply to you, and then how will you judge? Maybe, okay, your application, but number of stars, downloads, and some other vanity metrics may become useful in the sense I don't forget about optimizing and boosting them up. So if you're watching these videos, could you please go to the repository of Albumentations and give us a star?
And speaking about we both are from computer vision domain, but today all these domains, they are merging some big foundational models and something like this. And do you thinking about boost augmentation in this direction? Maybe some text augmentation, maybe some video augmentation, and or is it more about you didn't plan to move out of computer vision?
Okay, let's think short-term and long-term. There's a library by Facebook called Augly, and they perform image augmentations for images and text and videos, things like this. And they do it badly for all of them. And it's very confusing. It was feedback from one of the people I talked to them that I just, they said they looked at Augly's website and it was confusing. They wanted to do image augmentations and it was too much of information together, and they just make it simple. Tell me how just to do it for my use case. And this person said that Albumentations was great because you come to the website, you see these images, examples, link, documentation, done. So in this sense, all these stories that exist in startup world occupy a niche and then move to nearby niche, they kind of make sense. Is there for Augmentations things to improve in the domain of images? Yes, they are, but They are not like 5, 10 or like something like this, like not really long term. Again, I fix plenty of technical debt. Right now, adding augmentations is much faster, documentation is improving. And again, if I'll get to this habit even more, training myself, adding Mosaic and UIs and ways to choose augmentations, realistically, not that much to do. So in this sense, niche maybe not occupied, but I mean, we're doing pretty well in this like narrow image training domain. And again, I was thinking about going to nearby niches. Most obvious looks videos, because kind of like the most similar, and maybe like some kind of like multimodal stuff. And again, it makes me excited in many ways because if you think about training images, for me, it's like, pixel feature extraction, etc., etc. But when you think, let's say, when I learned about model called Clip, when you build embeddings in the same space from text and images, for me, maybe it's a step toward real machine learning, real AI, real something, something. And I suspect that based on the popularity of GPT-4o, trend is also going toward multimodal. So the answer is for the next few months, no. After that, everything is possible, especially multimodal.
Yeah, and it's an interesting question if all this augmentation will be necessary in future, or and how it will work in next 5 years. Because right now I see pretty often that people like didn't use even labeling process. They just label images with some big pre-trained model, and they just like multi-model model, and then just distill this in some models. And it's like interesting question where all this computer vision will be in next few years. But I remember like 10 years ago there was a lot of discussions about like, no, like in a few years we will have all models like trained excellent, and there will be like self-driving cars in 10 years. But we're still almost there.
My answer to this is, let's say, does company that trains some model on petabyte of imagery data needs augmentations? No, not really, because data set is diverse enough. What about if you go to some like more narrow domain, and again, it could be medicine, again, as we mentioned. It can be some corner cases for self-driving, or it can be, let's say, like this use case. People are trying to bring some weapons to the airport, and on this X-rays, you see them. How much of this data, petabytes, do you need to collect? It's basically, there are some like niches where collecting such a data and labeling is challenging. So augmentations will move there. Augmentations that exist, especially, again, biggest blocker, as we discussed, no one really knows that well, except like some narrow practitioners, how to pick augmentations, how to use them properly, how to get value out of them. So again, if there will be like more narrow niches and more old industry will adopt computer vision, if, or maybe in addition, if there will exist some automatic tools that will show value to wider range of audience, or if we will create augmentations that are more intelligent than flips, rotations, adding rain, things like this. So you don't need all three for this. You need any of them for augmentations to get new engine, new steam, and move forward. Will it happen? Who knows?
Yeah, but definitely it's one of the most interesting topic right now, how this AI developed. Thank you for interview, Vladimir. It was great, and I hope that it's our second interview, and probably there will be third sometime. I hope.
I hope so too.